the promise he made to our fathers, to Abraham and his children forever. Glory to the Father, and to the Son, and to the Holy Spirit, as it was in the beginning, is now, and will be forever. Amen. So bendiciones de María, Madre de Jesucristo. Proclama mi alma la grandeza del Señor, se alegra mi espíritu en Dios mi Salvador, porque ha mirado la humillación de su esclava. Desde ahora y me felicitarán todas las generaciones, porque el poderoso ha hecho obras grandes por mí. Su nombre es santo. Su misericordia llega a sus fieles de generación en generación. Él hace proezas con su brazo, dispersa a los soberbios de corazón, derriba del trono a los poderosos y enaltece a los humildes. A los hambrientos los calma de bienes, y a los ricos despide vacíos. Ojalá a Israel su siervo, acordándose de la misericordia, como la había prometido a nuestros padres en favor de Abraham, a su descendencia para siempre. Gloria al Padre, y al Hijo, y al Espíritu Santo, como era en el principio, ahora y por siempre, siempre, por los siglos de los siglos. Let us say together, Amen. And let us sing together. I think we're getting that. I saw the light down. What do you think, Leslie? Very good. Well, let's sing a beautiful song that's been a part of the ministry in many of our churches, but certainly at St. Thomas, for my goodness gracious, going on 8 years. Well, 7, almost 8 years. And it's called Keep on the Sunny Side. And if you know anything about this part of the country, you know about the Carter family. And no relation to the Carter family in Carter County, I'm sad to say. But just come on in, everybody, and get your little hymn book back there. And we're going to sing Keep on the Sunny Side. It's in your little hymn book here on page 4. I'm sorry. Page 4. I think we're getting to the page numbers, folks. We're welcoming Lee Bidgood again, who's helping me with all of this. Thank you, Leslie and family. Troubled side of life, there's a bright and a sunny side too. Though we meet with the darkness and strife, the sunny side we rise at you. Sing up. Keep on the sunny side, always on the sunny side. Keep on the sunny side of life. The day will never run away if you keep on the sunny side of life. Very good, very good. Crushing hopes that we cherish so dear, clouds and storms will in time pass away. The sun will shine bright and clear. Keep on the sunny side, always on the sunny side. Keep on the sunny side of life. It will help us every day. It will carry the clouds away if you keep on the sunny side of life. Page 4, everybody. There's long of hope each day, though the moment be cloudy or fair. side, always on the sunny side. Keep on the sunny side of life. Help us every day, it will never run away. If you keep on the sunny side of life. Yea, Sawyer. On the sunny side, always on the sunny side. Keep on the sunny side of life. It will let you never away, it will never come away. If you keep on the sunny side of life. If we keep on the sunny side of life. Amen. Hallelujah. Please be seated, and we're going to start with some talking and praying, and we started with that. Let me just talk a moment to introduce everyone. I'm Tim Holder, the pastor at St. Thomas in Elizabethton, and a beautiful place, oldest church running in the city, the beautiful old 1861 building. And a new life is being given by, who would have ever thought, in Carter County, Hispanic folk? Well, Father Tim, the mayor, said, I don't think we got any of those people here. That was only 8 years ago. The census report comes out, the fastest growing population in Appalachia, minority population being Hispanic. It's not a few dozen over here, or in the trailer park over there. It's not a few hundred, maybe over in Johnson City or Unicoi County at the farm. No, it's thousands in each of these counties. Let's wake up, America. I hope in the Episcopal Church, we've got a lot to offer, and it's being accepted by a growing number of folk. There are two, not totally unrelated, I might say, things that we want to talk about today. And I'm honored for St. Thomas and myself to be standing here today sharing this with you. The first 45 minutes, chronologically speaking, I came home in October of 2015. And when the bishop said to me, Bishop George at that time, we'd talked for about 3 hours, lots to talk about. And he leaned over, he stood up. He said, Timothy, I'm going to send you to Carter County. My heart jumped up, but it was kind of like down too, because I said, oh my Lord. I wouldn't allow myself to dream. I wanted to be with my sister and family eventually in this life and to get home. I was interviewing in North Carolina and Virginia, the great Appalachian diocese, I like to say, this being the greatest, of course, of Central Appalachia. And thank you, Bishop George, and Bishop, especially our present bishop, who's been a great supporter and friend. So I stood up, and my grandmama taught me, and Dad, shook his hand. I didn't know if he thought I was going to say, this is crazy. I'm not going to go back. I didn't say that. I said, yes, I'm ready to go home. You can go home. You can go home again. 10 generations, I'm a 10th. Later, I stepped into Carter County, and I said, Bishop, and many of you remember, Bishop's a pretty big guy. I'm a pretty big guy. And I looked at him, and as serious as I've ever said anything else, Bishop, I ain't no Jesus. I didn't say that. I'm no Jesus. But in Luke 4, they ran him off the cliff, tried to, and kill him then. And I've got cousins in Carter County that know how to do that. So it makes me a little nervous, but I'll do my best. And by way of introduction, I'm very privileged to be an Episcopalian. We are. And I was driving home down through the beautiful Shenandoah there on Highway 81, the interstate. And I said, well, this has been quite a career, Tim, with the church and in politics in Washington and here at home over my life. I'm 68. I turned 68 last week. And I was just thanking God for it all, and I just sort of breathing good. I'm going to be home. And I'm not even sure I said Appalachia right at that time. And I got home, started my work at St. Thomas Episcopal Church, where I became an Episcopalian, where I was rescued from some fundamentalism and some hurt and shame and all that. Love will do all that, you know. And I started, oh, it's going to be good, you know, not too much work, and Wednesday go in and see a few people in the hospital. It was within, I am telling you, the top of my soul, it was within 45 days that the first Hispanics started showing up here and there. And I want to tell you that story in just a moment. And then, a year or two after that, Tim, is there any integrity to what we Episcopalians? Yes, let us own evangelism. Is there any integrity for us if we cannot really, genuinely appreciate the spirit, which after all involves the music, the poetry, the love of a place, Appalachia, not in the back, through the back door, as Dr. King used to say, but through the front door. Not at some fair, that's all great. Not just at the Carter Fold, that's beautiful. But I'm talking about at the altar. At the altar. Can we appreciate, thank you, St. John's and the diocese. No, this is God's music, and it's God's Spirit that was moving. None of us really knew quite what to do, still don't too much. But that's how it all began. It's amazing. In the words of the rappers that I had been privileged to work with in New York, the South Bronx, even better. God's love don't stop. It just doesn't. And when we begin to, just a little bit, look at that. It'll be tired. There will be the sunny side. There'll be some dark sides too. And I've been privileged, I got out of politics, couldn't win anything, to be in Birmingham, Alabama. And I don't say this to go on a parade right yet, but the first openly gay priest. Thank you, Episcopal Church, for accepting my kind. I was very proud down there as well to work with people I'd worked with in my political career, my growing up in Elizabethton, and on the wrong side, quote unquote, of town. It was news when the big white priest got there from Harvard Divinity. It had been too much news in the paper when these people's homes were breaking down and when they were trying to get a little education at the high school there. You know the stories. You know the stories. We all do. We care. I'm not saying just Episcopalians, but with special affection I am. And with that background, headed to the South Bronx, I wouldn't be standing here today. I'm not saying this in a romantic kind of way, if not for the rappers and young men and women using the tongue, the beat, the very instrument and very being of their fiber from their granddaddies and grandpapas in this modem, in this genre of hip-hop. I'm not here to talk about that today, but I'm here to tell you they were true. The burning of the Bronx, who's going to speak up? Nobody did in the South Bronx. 200 apartment buildings burning. It took hip-hop and some of these fellows that knew a little bit about rap, the African-American tradition. So with that rich background, and then coming home here, I really didn't know, I knew very little of what I was doing. Virginia Theological Seminary welcomed me, invited me for a scholarship for research on hip-hop in the church, which Professor West at Seminary, Cornell West, had talked about hip-hop being the last, perhaps the last form of transformation of the holy among our African-American youth. That was in '99. I started meeting folks like Lee Bidgood at East Tennessee State University and others I think who will be here. And I started listening. Bluegrass used to be caustic to me. I just have to witness to that. And there was a beauty that was so deep, that was beautiful. And I was thinking, Jesus, what's going on? And I went to the dean. I said, I don't need to be writing about hip-hop. I can do that later. But I'm discovering my home. And I learned how to stand up a little bit better because some of the folk in Birmingham, Alabama, who happened to be African-American, they knew how to stand up, including the 4 little girls that were killed at the Baptist church during civil rights, who were buried 2 blocks away from my church in Woodlawn, including those rappers through hostage situations in which I was one. Who came checking on the father and on the church? the rappers, because our Jamaican, our beautiful Anglican expat Brits were too old. So I've learned a lot in these travels, and I was breathing and thinking, phew, this is going to be sort of an after effect. And it was that January, and this will end with the biography here, but I needed to tell you all of that. It was in that January, and the mayor, I said, well, if you need people, your average Sunday attendance is 12, 15, and you might want some more people in your church. Now, there are those who do not. And I just said that, didn't I? But it's true, and you know it. Well, I know how to do a little Spanish, and I'll just, where can there be some Hispanic folk? I wasn't praying intently or like, Lord, it was not one of those miracles, but it was every bit a miracle. I was headed up to some old friends in the Douglas community there in Elizabethton, the traditional African-American community. This is how God works. Keep your eyes open. I know you do. You wouldn't be here. Keep your hearts open. And I was headed up this steep hill going up to Douglas community. And for the life of me, I thought at first I was maybe just going crazy. I really did. And I was my eye caught over to the left. I thought it was a bird bath. I said, oh my God, that's Maria Guadalupe. God bless you, dear mother. And I said, oh, no, there's no way. The mayor said there's none here, and I don't know. I haven't seen any at Walmart, whatever. I said, Tim, go around the block and come back. I came back, and as I approached about here to there, I said, goodness gracious, that's Maria Guadalupe. I'm a good Protestant, but I'm also a good Catholic. I'm a good Anglican. And I pulled over. I came to the pond here, and I just said a brief prayer of the Holy Spirit. And at that moment, about that window, the door creaked, and it was 3 little brown heads peeking out the door, smiling and happy as if they were already celebration, saying, it's okay, Father, you can celebrate too. They came running out. I'd never met these people, and they embraced me. That was a conversion. It was a celebration. And then the whole family came out. So happened that this was the new owners of the 3 Mexican restaurants in Elizabethton and Johnson City. And it so happens, as the story goes on to Easter, within 45 days later, these were in my first 4 months. I thought it was all kind of, man, I've seen it. I've seen the light. Not really. I hadn't seen all the light that God had in store for us. I was 60 years old. I'd served my time and enjoyed doing it, most of it, the agony and the ecstasy. Well, they invited me to the kitchen, to El Charlotte. And that, they wanted to be baptized. They wanted to be confirmed in the church. They had a young 15-year-old who was ready for Quinceañera. And pa-bum. Easter morning, St. Thomas, 2016, 16 of the family came. And 16, we celebrated some sacraments that day. And that was the beginning. And I did, what are we going to do? And I really didn't have, this is in Carter County in Elizabethton, Tennessee. And of course, and I started telling myself, so that led into a rich, rich ministry. You might know the name of Andrew Root. And for you youngers here and for folks that maybe don't sit around and read books of theology, I do commend him. He is, 16 books or something. He's a good Lutheran brother, teaches at Lutheran Seminary. And he's been around for about 10, 11, 12 years maybe, if anyone knows exactly. But Andrew Root, who I respect very, very much, the bishop gave me a book not so long ago talking about innovation. Andrew Root says right at the top, church, this was like 21, the book was published, please, no more innovation. We're innovated to death. I related to that. What's the next program? What's the next commercial? What's the next book? We're innovated to death. And he goes on to talk about, he's a great scholar and great writer and great believer. He speaks of, not of innovation at all, but he speaks of coming back to ourselves. He speaks of heart. he speaks of God working in spirit in the lives of music as children is this, in the lives of us who've committed ourselves, not just to Jesus Christ, but in our world to have a community of believers, this beautiful community of Episcopal and Anglican tradition and life. He uses the word resonance. So as a framework to what we're talking about today, and then we want to get in discussion with one another, we have the guidebook there, and that's some good questions and all, and pictures and all that good stuff. But resonance. Let us be a people of resonance. What resonates in your heart today for where you are? Next county, take all that out of your mind. Not churched, lost sheep. Take all of that out of your mind. I don't speak Spanish. Take it out of your mind. What resonates? And I think that's the central question right now. Not just because, but particularly, especially because of pandemic. What resonates? What is our heart? What is our blood? And what are the other bloods, so to speak, as the rappers might say it? We have diverse counties. Did I say that? Yes. Right here in East Tennessee. Right here in Northeast Tennessee. Right there in Carter County. So, what resonates, I would submit, and we need to look at that in terms of the bishop has talked very wisely about this, and I know how to spend money on mission and all that, and most of us do. Money's one of the funding, absolutely, and I'm looking at some folks who've been very generous to our ministry, including this diocese. Much of what you see with the Hispanic, this of course is our bluegrass, Jim Miller, who was with us yesterday, is because of you, and thank you for that support. It's been pivotal in being here today and spreading the good news. Resonance, yes. Also, we have the framework, what is resonance and what makes resonance a reality in the working of the Spirit? Well, that's accountability, yes, for one. That's sustainability. Is it sustainable? The ministry sustainable? And is the capacity there? Now, sometimes we don't have to insist on that. It might be that God wants to put a ministry in the church to revive it for a year or two. It'll do it. I think most of the time, and certainly in my experience, yes, this is a long-term evangelistic greater family that we preach, teach, and we sometimes have a hard time of living. And it's not easy. We're in a sort of a downtime now as far as the average Sunday attendance, and that's important. But when you hear SAA, I like to ask people, well, what's the average soul attendance? Is the soul in the house? You can have 3,000 people and have no soul. That's pretty sad. Surely not that many. You can have, so at the ASA, how about the average street attendance? Where have we been? There are brothers here. Where's Jim? Right over here. And I want, Jim, you to speak somewhat to what we're doing on the streets. And that might be basically where we're called. With the success we've had, we're getting calls now for health care. Thank you, Episcopalians, for caring about the health and good-natured and just the well-being of our Hispanic populations, certainly in East Tennessee. But this is true across the board. You'll go to one of the wonderful health books in public health, you'll get a paragraph maybe, usually a sentence. Well, they're obese and they drink too much and they're at question, speaking about the Hispanics. I'm not oversimplifying it. I know. I've studied this, and it's a wonderful now, thanks to the Episcopal Diocese and our work. You see on the front of the Hispanic book, these were about 24, maybe a dozen of our 150 children coming for a back-to-school gift card, which was given by Episcopal Relief and Development, the good bishop of this diocese on behalf of East Tennessee. And it begat not only the first 10,000, but a second 12,000. I believe in the efficacy and the gift and the spirit of money to make change. And it's made some change. If there's a call from the university, East Tennessee State, from the newspaper, from the School of Health, and they're needing to know about Hispanic, they will call St. Thomas. And we're very privileged to have them on our committees and to be in partnership. And I want to talk about partnerships today as well. So that's a little bit about our Hispanic ministry. It was born really at Easter of 2016. Pandemic was not easy for any of us. You'll see pictures in the program book there. It was really, you could say the pinnacle, but it was a wonderful time. July the 7th of 2019, 6 months, of course, before the pandemic. And the bishop was there. You see him sort of squeezed in. Do you see that picture? I want to be sure you see it. This is what a little church can do and provide. Page 2, the picture at the top. I'm told that there have never been that many people in our beautiful church, capacity 108. There were more there that day than that. And we had grown to, my best estimate, a strong dozen families. We identified 24 communities in Carter, Johnson, Unicoi, and Washington counties who we go out with communion. We'll be going into the restaurants. Jim, would you say a word about what's coming up for Ash Wednesday for the 7th anniversary, I think?
Yeah.
This is Jim Butler, who was the founder of the ministry. He and his wife, Joyce.
Pre-pandemic, Tim asked me to go with him after Ash Wednesday. I didn't know what to expect. I'm not sure Tim knew what to do.
I did not.
And we took Ash. We went to El Charlotte and Elizabethton. We went to the Mexican restaurant here and the third one. And we went to the kitchen. And these are some of the hardest working people you'll ever see. And they'd come off sweaty because they just run. Take off their hats for ashes. And I'm not sure how many we did that night. 50 maybe?
Through the 3 restaurants, it was a big number.
Yeah.
We went to 3 restaurants,
And
the founders.
after after applying anybody who asked, and Tim would take communion families at home or in a restaurant in the kitchen. Tim, believe it or not, was talking and to the cashier, and I was leaning up against the back wall next to the manager, and he leans over and he says, "How much do we owe you?" What? How much do we owe you? Nothing. We don't charge for this or for the sacrament. They do at the Roman church, I found out. But we don't. And, oh, well, let us feed you. No, we've got 2 diabetics here. And so then we went to the second one, and it was more or less the same thing. They were just so grateful that somebody would care enough to do that. And as we were walking out, young lady that was it you or me? I can't remember. Stopped and said, "I don't think they're Episcopalians," but she was nodding toward a table full of young Hispanic men. Yeah, if they won't
That's amen. Thank you, Jim. That ministry, as simple as it is, God works in the simple after all, in the basic, was a real foundation. And we began to see, wow, I'd heard of street and altar before. In fact, I'd studied and written quite a bit about it. And people say, well, these Hispanics are not quite our fault. And you Anglicans, on the streets, these are things people would say to me, you Episcopalians are on the streets? Really? And I would get the questions, and I've learned a little bit about not getting too redheaded. I've got Irish-Scottish blood with a lot of the rest of you, I'm sure. And I would just listen. And, well, it happened, and I didn't become defensive in the end. And we pushed out. Jim and a little parish, we need to get over this little syndrome. We had a new member come in and start saying, little mighty St. Thomas. And it's a little church, 108 capacity, 1861. And I said, Bobby, don't say that. That sort of embarrasses me. He said, no, it's true. I'm going to say it. Everybody in town, a lot of people in town calls us mighty little St. Thomas. And we are. You are. When we really move through that whole thing that Andrew Root is talking about, what it resonates. Well, this began, you talk about resonating. My Lord. You can do facts and figures and numbers all day long. It's more than we could handle. And that's when y'all and the bishop and people coming from other parishes and the Tri-Cities Latin Partnership, founded by the Episcopal Church in Elizabethton, where people gather. We've got a waiting list, as crazy as that seems, both for the Christmas celebrations in the kitchens, the Easter celebrations, and also, of course, the Ash Wednesday. Very simple. Since the pandemic, we have the kitchens are a great home to us. You can tell it's a great home to me. But we have people, the radio's turned on in the kitchens as they're preparing for Sunday lunch and all. And then I'll go by and you think I'm the king of the universe. And of course I have a big meal and the tacos are great and all that. So that was the beginning. That would stretch out into years. Well, by summer, that picture that you just saw, there were 3 quinceañeras that year. There were 2 dedicaciones where they dedicate the child before baptism or before confirmation. It varies whether you're from Veracruz in the south or Guatemala and so on and so. Just like, we differ from Knoxville and Chattanooga in some ways, certainly. We certainly sing the songs probably better than anyone in the diocese. No, I didn't mean that. Keep on the Sunday side. Y'all, we're all a good part of that. So that led to many opportunities, but the sacraments, if I said one thing to you today, if you're interested for your parish, a new parish, old parish, get all of that out of the way. A mighty one that you don't think that, just get all of that out of the way. What's resonating with you today? Where are your prayers? Where's your heart? Where's the heart of the parish? Once you're really getting acquainted with that, you can move in. Let's put a plan together. And you can maybe move right out onto the streets. I recommend it. Walmart. I grew very fond of Walmart in my first years. It was all I could do when I very, 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 very first came home, not to hand out my cards. But I started doing that. Moving from 16, the elections, into ICE, into all the things that were going on in 16 with the new administration, with immigration, the walls, and all this stuff. Lord, what are we going to do? Well, we're going to be who we are. And there were people literally, if you came in from the highlands of Guatemala, the highlands, and also not as high in Mexico, down at INS in Dallas and Atlanta, I know dozens of people and families told me this. We were told to get to the mountains, get to the mountains. That's us. One of the junior owners, the junior who's the to-be owner of the El Charlet Elizabethton, Jordani, we befriended one another. I gave him his first Virgin of Guadalupe, and I was honored to do that medal. And that was very dear to him. He didn't have a mother. He was adopted. He made that witness. He said, Father Tim, I have friends in the mountains. I went, I don't want to get arrested. I never asked where you're from. I never ask. May I see your papers? None of that stuff, obviously. And stupid sometimes, ignorance can be on our side. And I've practiced that for 25 years in Hispanic ministry. Nor did I when Giordani came to me. He had an iPhone. He said, these are all my friends. And he just kept going. I said, my goodness. He said, well, there are 3 or 4 dozen up on Buck Mountain. Buck Mountain is where you do not want to be located or to even visit in Elizabethton, Tennessee, for all kinds of bad reasons. He said, we can do it at a 15-minute visit. The Tri-Cities Latin Partnership, which we had started, 4 churches, a Christian, other Episcopalians, and God bless the Presbyterians of Johnson City. Lord have mercy. And we would meet, we would pray. And they started bringing these big gift bags of tarps, basic food, basic cleaning, where they could clean themselves. And to the mountains we would go. It would just be Giordani and me. The collar would get me through and trusted to a little bit. And I said, no, Giordani, 15, 20 minutes max. And we would be up on Buck Mountain. And I'm not saying no fear, but I'm saying you just have to step through some of that stuff. I'm a pretty privileged little guy. And, it bothered me a little bit. And I'd been around town a few times. So there we were. And there were literally, he got on his phone, there would be 14, 15 maybe people coming in. You talk about hopeless folk. You talk about people that needed a home. You talk about people that needed a handshake and an embrace. That's who we are. And when we do it, it's amazing. I could go into any one of the kitchens, and I will add also in these years past to the farms over in Unicoi County. There are really 3. There's one up Stony Creek in Carter County. And we make it our business to get Easter communion, Christmas communion, go take confessions, be at their restaurants on Sunday nights. We started with, and they would come in from the deforestation mills and so forth up in North Carolina because ours was the closest Walmart. And I would have, it would be Jim or another member of the parish, Hispanic. Over time, they would have this beautiful, it's a picture in the booklet there of Maria Guadalupe icon, which is in the church. And they would come out, and I was just going to give them a blessing, and we were giving them bags for security and safety and health. And invariably, I didn't want to mess up the business at the restaurant. So here we were, Maria Guadalupe, right with us. And they would, little folks, big folks, old folks, young folks, just about all men. And they would say, Father, yo soy mis confesión. They would confess their sins, sometimes taking 2 and 3 minutes. I learned to shut up and listen. I would give them absolution. That's on-the-spot absolution right there. They would kiss the icon, embrace, and they would bless us. That happened and happened and happened. Never learned that in seminary. So you got to be open and creative. And I want to go over just some basics of the ministry. We've put up, Jim.
Talk about something that they touch with people. We volunteer with it has English on one side, Spanish on the other. They come to church and they hear service, at least part of it.
Ramos, this is the prayer book, but it's certain basic excerpts from the Book of Common Prayer through church publishing. Page numbers match, and I highly recommend it. If you're getting along the road, let me send you home with one today. This is arguably probably not the most important part of mission because we can speak in that language. Many of you have had high school, elementary Spanish. Don't deny that. That's where I started 25 years ago. And so let me sort of back up now. So when we speak of residents, you can begin to see when we have even a small parish, especially, a small number of people by 2s and 3s, we literally have a waiting list for these liturgies. We go into the casinos, the kitchens, and the gardens, but we don't want to bunch up on people, obviously. And with the 24 communities with which we bless the 150 children, nuestros niños y familias, in 21 with our diocese and the National Episcopal Relief and Development. You talk about getting known, and people will come to us. But there are 24 communities. There's a Pentecostal community of women who were abused in Mexico who identify with the Episcopal Church Anglicano. I know. I go over there and they ask for my blessing, and I get blessed. And that's next to the old bus station in Johnson City, Assembly of God, and we communicate. They're probably not going to become Episcopalian, but we're in community. The farms, as I said, the trailer parks, God bless the trailer parks. 7, we're on. And there's nothing wrong at the beginning of pandemic with taking, Krispy Kreme ended up giving us half of what we would buy, or they would pay for half. And we got up to about 9, 10 of the big dozen boxes of Krispy Kreme donuts. If you want to have a morning prayer with Krispy Kreme donuts in a trailer park, you will have people there. And you'll be able to pray, and you'll be able to meet people. Hopefully they won't turn out with this much chocolate and Krispy Kreme. But that is a great evangelical tool, Krispy Kreme chocolate. And it excites people. And there's some pictures, as you're seeing here. I think there's 1 or 2 from our Krispy Kreme pandemic donut morning prayers. And the trailer parks over on South Roan alone here in Johnson City, there are 4 trailer parks. Those are the folks that cannot afford a home closer to the farms in Unicoi County, and those are the folks that are beginning to buy a home who are hospital workers, teachers, and really progressing in a first, second, third generation movement into our society. And we recognize that and celebrate that, and we do that through the sacraments, more importantly than anywhere else. So let me stop there. We're at, about 10 more minutes. Questions, discussion items, any folks speaking Spanish at the altar or in the neighborhood?
Tim, I heard you say something the first time I was there, and you kind of mentioned it in passing, but it's almost unbelievable. But you did say it was something.
Excuse me, maybe. Catholic churches not only charge, but charge a lot. And here in the United States. Well, in Mexico and Guatemala, too. That's a part of the stewardship program. Excuse me. $50, $300. Get your the sacraments. That's right. Let me say a word about stewardship.
You're missing your clip.
Am I? Okay.
Yep. You
Oh, really?
lost your. Yep,
Okay.
there it is.
Thank you all. Hometown. Wanted to look good for everybody. Stewardship in parishes in Alabama, in the Bronx, which is a more developed Latin community, certainly, Mexican included. We're talking 3-4 generations. But in the newer generations in Alabama, here in East Tennessee, in New Jersey, where I was part of starting the first one, then an 800-person parish on the Jersey Shore. And in Atlantic City, at a grocery store, we started a prayer group. What happens is we will, from our knowledge and standpoint, say, well, they're not giving any money, and they don't pledge. That's generally true. It took me 20 years to get home and learn from our people there. The stewardship, I had just finished the dedication of a little baby whose father was working in Detroit for 3 months. And they were going to dedicate the baby, and then the grandparents were coming from Mexico, and we're going to have the baptism of the baptism. Well, he comes over. I've seen this 100 times. I call it rolled bills stewardship, and it was a big roll. Now, part of that might have been the macho thing. Somebody said, I don't know. I really don't care so much on the good parts of macho, but anyway, if there are. But he held that out. I said, Cuesta. And I said, Tim, he's asking you to receive his gift dignified. It took me all those years to learn that. And he gave $300, and I said, we have a silver bowl on the altar, if you would please take it up there. So there are ways to create and to recognize and to honor. My senior warden, who was one of the best persons I've ever met in Alabama, the church was packed. People were coming in, half Hispanic on one side and Blancos on the other, pretty much. And he comes up to the altar to get the offering plate. He and the other ushers said, am I going to take their money? Am I going to ask them for money? I said, yes. I'm an old fundraiser, and but I didn't know what the culture was really. So he comes back. I call them working men and women dollar bills. They were packed high on that plate, smiling. So it's different ways and different customs and different teachings, and we need to be very patient with that and not so judgmental, Father Tim, and we really don't. Other questions? Sister. And you speak Spanish beautifully. God bless you.
How do you deal when you have folks, especially if you come to from Guatemala and Honduras, who don't, maybe Spanish isn't even their native language, or maybe they're not, folks who are not literate in
Well, first of all, let's quit saying Spanish is a second language or English is a second language. Y'all might be aware of this, but it would be like, I don't know, downcasting my grandmom for the way she pronounced hard R's or A's, some Appalachian talk. And that's not nice. It's not right. So the Guatemalans, which I was 2 years, the better part of 2 years at the Cathedral San Pablo in Ciudad Guatemalteco, and always identified as Guatemalteco after that. We had a mission up in the beautiful colonial cities, and it was very rich. But what I learned there on the whole matter of English, my gosh, I was given when I left this beautiful stole. I almost brought it today. And it was given by the matriarch. Civil war there for 25, 30 years. A lot of the men die, or they come home to little villages. They drink themselves to death, other drugs if they can get it. And the women run the village, literally. They're the matriarchs, as we might say. And they wear this big turban. Those beautiful Mexican, Hispanic stoles you see on priests? That's what that is originally. I was given, she took a turban from her head, and it had, at that time, the 36 tribal peoples, their patterns, their tartans, if you will, and I wear it with the greatest pride. So these matriarchal women run the village, and they speak very well, sometimes 2 and 3 of the native languages, Quiche in my parish in Alabama, and 35 others. Some of them share a language, but they tend to have their own dialect and language, not unlike Native Americans here. So it's English, thank you, as a third language, at least. As far as your question, for Guatemalans, what were you saying about Guatemalans particularly?
I was just curious. I mean, we have a lot of materials available in Spanish. Often we have materials obviously available in English. When you don't have necessarily materials that are available to you in that person's dialect, or maybe they're not able to make their prayer book for various reasons, what are your strategies for?
Thank you.
When you have that language barrier, not just with English and Spanish, but with other languages.
Right. Say that your language barrier is absolute, which I pretty much felt, not degrading Mrs. Lewis in the 5th grade. That's where I first learned Spanish, and it came back to me many, many years later. That's another story. But assume you have no Spanish, and you don't really intend to have any, which you might change your mind in a ministerial or congregational and familial situation as we have. Number one rule that Mama taught us and Daddy, be yourselves. I remember going to the first Hispanics coming in down in Alabama, and I said, I just don't speak Spanish. It was really the big reason why I didn't really feel that. Bishop, are you going to get a priest in from, he found one in Cuba. I said, gee, thanks. That's not the preferred country for Mexico, and all that. So, and I started relearning my Spanish from early on. parallel, page-to-page parallel English, Spanish will teach you Spanish. You know the prayer book, and you can pretty much surmise. And they will be very forgiving. What the Guatemalans and the Mexicans down in Birmingham told me, and have since that time, well, certainly as I was learning Spanish, Father, please don't apologize or explain. This was one of the first words in my first month. Miriam Argueta, who's a dear, dear friend to these days, she said, Father, don't apologize for your language. Don't apologize for not having the best Spanish. I said, I'm really very little. She said, no, we speak corazón y corazón, heart to heart. I thought, well, that's nice. That's a greeting card. She was serious. She was very serious. We know innately if people are interested in us. We know in our hearts and innately if we love the music. We know innately so well sometime, I think these children are born with this talent. And we ourselves are born with gifts. And I see language in that category. It is, after all, a social construct. Is that to say, don't study Spanish? No. Get an elementary book, and there are plenty of them around. But the best for us folk that know the prayer book, these words match. Sanctus, sanctus, in the Latin, you know, from the prayers. That would be my number one. Number one is to be yourself. Number two is to start with the prayer book. And number three, if you want to take Spanish, that's great. But take it from the folk coming in. Ask them to teach you. They will be honored, as a rule. And find yourself in the restaurants, find yourself in the tiendas. We have 2 bodegas in Johnson City. And I say we because the folk from Elizabethton. We have a full Spanish bakery over in Elizabethton. It's a home. And you talk about some pasteles and some cakes and dulces. It's amazing. So just be in the marketplace, so to speak. Be in the neighborhoods as much as you can. Everybody's got a neighbor, and all those neighbors got 15-year-old young daughters. There's a male ceremony as well at 15. But the quinceañeras, you talk about evangelism. Get to do the communion, and then about 300 over at the VFW on their own highway. And I'll take a stack of cards, and I go to every table and make sure they know when our misa is. 11 hora, domingo. And by the way, another big issue on the language, oh, we have an Hispanic congregation, great. But it's at 8 o'clock and we're at 11, or it's on Sunday night. Sometimes that's very necessary, certainly with the workload and the work schedule of many of our Hispanics. But we have mighty little St. Thomas. There are really good things about being with an average Sunday attendance of not above 50, 40 even, because you can share the languages. So we're bilingual. We'll enter Gospels always in Spanish and English. The main communion words are always bilingual. But if, 4 families come in and they take one side of the church, one family will take a couple pews, generally speaking, or in the neighborhood and so forth. And, we'll up it a little bit. We might do the creed and, of course, the prayers we would do in Spanish. There are good ways to address that work. Does that answer pretty much? Sometimes that's the most exciting because some people, like me, think they are very good Spanish speakers now, and it's lacking. The accent marks are greater of need. When we have Hispanics there, I do. And it might be a phrase I'm just clinging back to. Dios es posible, es magnífico por hermana y hermano. I'll speak about a family that I've been with. And I will ask hermano, ¿cómo dice responsabilité, or whatever. And just trust the people.
But you go back and forth a lot.
Yeah, we have to go back and forth if you're bilingual. And during pandemic, when earlier pandemic, it's very important. Well, there's none here today. I said, okay, and we're going to be doing the gospel in Spanish forever, and we're going to be announcing the communion in Spanish forever because we're going to honor them. And then they started listening on the radio. And then we started to get invited to house blessing. A new family comes in, a new couple, married or not, a young woman, 15. Carol's not here. That's one of her specialties. We'll get a call from Giordani or one of the restaurants. Would you mind going and blessing a house? They feel that the devil is attacking them. And I might not put it that way, but there was something attacking them. I can guarantee you. And it wasn't good. And you walk in the restaurant, and they just come out and hug you from the kitchen, and they're very thankful. It is truly heart to heart. So language works in all kinds of ways, but the basic, if you're committed to it, get the language down, folks. I used to say I knew 10 words if I knew them very well. Get you about 100 words. You can communicate. It's pretty easy, the language.
Also, the liturgy speaks volumes.
Oh, yes.
It speaks volumes, I mean, because, I had a similar experience with a family around the corner from me in Conway that wasn't Spanish, but they had immigrated from Southern Carolina. And when you speak heart to heart, when you listen, and I offered at the end of the first conversation with that family, I actually invited, I asked them, would you mind if I pray for you? And they were like, we're not Christians. And I was like, you don't have to be Christian for me to pray for you. And they had a family member with a problem. I said, my church will pray for you. And she kind of looked at me like, what church do you go to? Oh, the Episcopal church around the corner. And she came to our church the next Sunday, and when she heard her brother's name read in the prayers of the people and pronounced correctly, she cried.
Very
The
important.
whole rest of the service, and she stayed, and she brought the whole family to our church. And the comment she made after she and her sister had been coming for a few Sundays, she said, "You all," she said, "I thought," she said, "we lived here for over 10 years. You were the first Christians we have ever met."
This happens.
It happens, and
More often than
our
not.
brother, I mean, we had the Maundy Thursday service, and he said, "I don't understand the rest of this, but I
So I got 30 minutes left. Yeah, I need to move on to the next one. Thank you.
Because it's very much a part of the belief, so
Thank you.
it doesn't matter what language it is, when you speak heart to heart, when you welcome people, when you take time to listen to them, that speaks volumes.
Let's move on into the Appalachian ministry. We're going to sing another song here in a second, but turn to page 2. This little workbook, introduction, whatever you might want to call it, keep in mind what's resonating. It might be motorcyclists. Who knows what it could be? What's resonating? Hispanic, I would commend to you. It is a fast-growing population. They know they're Catholic. That is to speak, they know their church. Don't get tripped up in Anglo or just do it and be it. The prayer book. We have the Word and we have the sacrament. Las palabras de sacramentos, todos. So you will have ideas, and I wish we had more time to discuss today, but the resonance, when you think of these categories, sustainability, capacity, what is the sustainability of the body? That is the church. Body, mind. What is the capability of the mind? Can we imagine this? Is it something we're informed about? Do we need to have more information, more experience, most importantly? And then the soul. Is this part of our soul? When you've got those three things clicking together, any psychiatry that's worth its salt, any evangelist who's worth his or her salt, you've got something going. That's what's happened at St. Thomas. And out of 45 parishes, I know of half a dozen this could happen. I'm not just talking about the city. We've got 16% of the population in Hamilton County today, in the city of Chattanooga, which is Latin. Johnson City, again, it's not, well, we know a family over here. That's many years ago. Or a group over there. Or, oh, we have hundreds. No, you have thousands. Thousands. In the 4 counties that we cover, Carter, Johnson, Unicoi, and Washington, an estimated 8,200 people. That's just here. So that sermon over. Resonance is in terms of self and of the body, and it is, again, the resonance. What is flaming up the situation, your heart. Remember, the liturgy, these are people of liturgy and the sacraments. Never doubt that. Stay very close to that. Festival, yes, sacramentos, bautizados, Eucharistia, cumpleaños, quinceañeras, más y más y más y más. And that is the liturgy, and that's the coming to the church quotient. Have a lot of celebrations. They will be, because that's family. Celebrate 10 babies a month if you can, and celebrate them in the park if you can. But they want to come and dedicate their babies within 24 hours at the icon of Maria Guadalupe. Not that they're worshiping Maria Guadalupe. Stay away from all of that stuff. We are not the Roman Church. We do recognize Mary in the prayer book as the Queen of Saints. That's very adequate, and the beautiful Magnificat. Continue role in leading education in our communities. I don't mean to be superior or anything like that, but we Episcopalians know how to do a lot of things. One thing we know how to do is to lead a role in public education for public awareness regarding health and environment among Latin Appalachians. I'm very proud of that. The Episcopal Church made that possible and is making it possible with articles printed in scholarly journals, presentations, Appalachian Studies Association, thanks to Appalachian Studies at ETSU, Lee and team, and Rebecca, who might be here in a moment. Continue and grow partnerships. You know that about church. Partnerships, partnerships, partnerships. East Tennessee State University, public health, cultural studies, of course, Appalachian Studies. The police departments, yes. Get the police chief in. Pray with him in Spanish. Give him a Bible, a big Spanish Bible for his desk. He becomes a friend, and he called me 2 weeks ago. Father Tim, I wanted to come over to St. Thomas. Jim, I think you were there. At any rate, he said, we're looking for male and female Latin applicants for police officers. And I took him immediately down to one of the kitchens and said, Eddie, we're needing some really good qualified men and women for police officers in Elizabethton. And he looked at me, he's a very smart guy, and said, us? Like that. Yes, you. That came because of St. Thomas Church and just a relationship. So you be that in your community. It's needed. And develop your church giving. Develop it in the ways we were talking about. Lots of food, comida, muchas celebraciones, Maria Guadalupe, festival, festival, festival. Any other questions? Very good. Let's move on to...
Can I make a comment?
Sure.
I'm Lee Preston. I teach at Salon.
Yes, please tell them what you do, Lee, because...
I teach classical Spanish at Latin University. So I just want you to know that if this is stirring anything in your hearts or in your communities, that the Episcopal Church Office of Latinx and Ministries has a full range of resources for parishes who are just starting at all Latino ministries, training for folks, including an Episcopal Latino ministry competency course that we host at Salon in August in person, a 1-week intensive. But they also offer coaching. They want to do a demographic studies to study.
Amen.
So feel free to reach out to me, and I can put you in touch with folks and connect you with the resources that you can find in your community.
If you look on our webpage, you'll see the picture of the bishop at Nuestros Niños, our families, our children, Nuestros families. And I think there's no greater symbol what he did that day. We were dedicating a labyrinth and having 150 kids and their families there all day. Repeated it in Unicoi County the week afterwards. He was kneeling down, and 2 little children who were new to me, and so beautiful, a little boy and a little girl. And they're there as if they're dancing around the middle of the picking flowers. Some people, no, don't pick the flowers. I said, no. I'd seen this little liturgy tradition before. The bishop had just been trying his ring, his big bishop's ring, on the little boy and little girl's fingers. My dream, that is my dream there. Think about that. A little girl, little boy growing up to be a bishop in the Episcopal Church. And they kept saying, and so they went to the flowers in the middle of the labyrinth for the dedication day. And they were getting petals to honor the bishop and stroke. So these are new customs. These are new folk, so to speak, and we're new folk to them. So we Episcopalians, I think, have got a head start. We know how to welcome. We really know how to welcome for the greatest part. We do have a head, we've got a heart, and we really move on things that resonate as a rule. So let us take heart, corazón y corazón, with them and all of us, and move into a greater day for Hispanic membership and participation and leadership in the Episcopal Diocese of East Tennessee. We're beautifully situated. So now, could we get a sort of a maybe a little light of mine, a verse or two, and then we're going to speak for 15 minutes. Is that good, Madame? We got about 30 minutes, not quite. So if you'll turn to your, got a special treat for you at the very end. We want to save 5 minutes for that. But if you'll turn to your little hymn book there, we have it on the table. Take all those materials with you. See what it looks like. Papeles, 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 and just put a little Spanish, a little English, and make it happen. Come see us in Elizabethton. We have our calendar, which is on the back of this document there. But there are samples of both our Appalachian and Hispanic ministries. Just take all of that with you and use it as you will. We also have a hymnography, which we'll talk about in the Appalachian context in just a minute. So can we do a little light of mine here? Could we all stand up and stretch for the last 20 minutes or so? And what page are we on here, our little hymnal?
4.
Thank you. Page 4, this little light of mine. Thank you all so much. I'm gonna let it shine, this little light of mine. I'm gonna let it shine, this little light of mine. I'm gonna let it shine, let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Everywhere. I'm gonna let it shine. He is so good. Amen. I was trying to think of a good Spanish verse, but we're going to move on. Are these people beautiful and wonderful or what? They've been with us many times, and you can hear them live a lot of Saturday nights at the Boone's Opera, the great Boone's Creek Opry. Very good. We'll get you one more time right at the end in about 15 minutes. Okay, let's move on to a little bit of Appalachia, USA. Are there anyone here from a church? I think all of the diocese is in Appalachia. Am I right? Am I right, Archdeacon? Fairway. So we're very fortunate. We're all Appalachian. Let's turn to page 3. And this came as a result, working up there on that hip hop, which I love. God's love don't stop. I'm tempted almost to do that, but we'll do that next time. I started listening, as I know you all have, over the Carter Fold and just locally. I mean, they're in Carter County, meeting a fella by the name of Jim Miller. I said, oh, that's a beautiful instrument, and it was, his hammered dulcimer. And he said to me something. I said, what? He said, I've made 800 of these. I said, excuse me? I said, well, where are you from? I thought he was from Nashville or the Vatican in Rome or somewhere big. He said, I'm from up in Hampton, and I sent one to the Queen in England. I said, that's great, Jim. I want one. He said, no, I'm not going to make any more. 800 is what I decided I was going to make. He and his wife, Sherry, are devout Presbyterians. You could say that our Appalachian Ministries is evangelical. Certainly it is. It spreads a lot of good news, bless y'all. But at the same time, it is a community coming together. And there's so many stories, but one of my favorites is when and it's very sad because of whatever issue, choose your issue of the day. It's difficult in a lot of our cities, not just here, but around the country, to get together ministerial associations. I know that firsthand coming home. The bona fides were sort of difficult for some of the brothers. So I started discovering through Lee and the faculty and the Appalachian Studies, which became vital to the dissertation that I did write, the Appalachian tradition of music in the Episcopal and Anglican Church, that there was not only a simplicity, but a very sincere kind of approach, not that I shouldn't have known that before, to any number of religious traditions. One prevalent in my county and in Appalachia is the primitive Baptist, which would scare me normally until I really became a little bit more acquainted with the music of indigenous, so to speak. I can't go around using terms like liberation theology, although I say to this day, that's what it is. It's the liberation of souls and so forth. We've got some different names for it here. One is the Free Holiness Church. They are free and they are holy. Tell the Baptist board, tell the Methodist board, this is how they word it, not to call back. We're tired of sending them money, and we are free and we're holy and we're from here in Appalachia, and leave us alone. You've exploited us throughout history, our people in the 19th century and our land in the 20th. I used to think that was falteral. No, that's quite the fact. We've got, once again, God bless Appalachian Studies, which have been an academic subject only for 50 years. Well, having said that, could we maybe combine a little bit? I was talking with members of the Standing Liturgical Commission and the bishop and his wonderful organist, Nick, and musicians in the church. I said, well, my gosh, the hymnal, Wessex Carol, all the traditions and ballads right in our 82 hymnal, and the Lift Every Voice, which I call also the Appalachian, as well as the Black hymnal of the church. But there's more. So what you've heard today, we don't sing as a rule. Why not? We're in Appalachia. Hello? Or, even if we weren't here, anywhere across the country, Colorado, Rocky grass, Latin grass, I mean, it's international. Surprise, surprise. Ask Lee about that. And I know about it too. So maybe evensong. We'll have a wonderful Anglican, beautiful evensong. We'll put some lessons and carols with it, and we will have Appalachian evensong. That first happened, we stepped out in Christmas Advent of 2015, or excuse me, 18, 2 years after the Hispanic had started. And it just went beautifully. And to this day, some 75, I guess 80, 85 musicians now, not unlike the Rhone Street Ramblers here, and these beautiful children and mother who are so fine. And I mean, Sullivan County, Bluegrass, Carter family, it's who we are. Do we Episcopalians, can we say we genuinely appreciate our home and the spirit of brothers? This primitive Baptist preacher showed up at that first evensong, and he came to the second one. I said, brother, it's so good to see you again. He said, well, I want you to come up to my church. I said, I don't sing or pick or anything. He said, no, just be me and my wife's guest. I said, well, thank you. And so I went up, and he testified that day to his congregation of maybe 8 or 9 people, older folk. And he said, Father, I was very dignified that he would call me Father. That was an issue of me growing up about not being Roman Catholic and all that, and Episcopalian, etc. And he said, we might not agree on a whole lot, but we agree on this subject of love. And your music and your person being here means love, and I love you. That was a primitive Baptist preacher talking to a Carter County native, nonetheless, with a collar and probably a Trinity cross on. So is it possible for friendships? Is it possible for unity? We have found at St. Thomas that yes. And we have an active, you'll see on the schedule, we have a summer evensong. We do a big St. Francis. We do lots of other things. We awarded our first scholarship this past evensong. And I'm very proud to say that Tom Yutz, Songwriter of the Year, Bluegrass International Music Association, Grammy nominee, and Tim Stafford, 2-time Grammy. They've all found us, and they like our story a lot, and they wrote a song about it. We're going to end with that tonight. And everything we've been talking about, and it's true for you too, maybe more so, the abundance of creation means something. I had a wonderful Old Testament, Hebrew Testament professor in seminary, and he loved to talk about the abundance in Genesis. First tenured African-American priest or teacher at the divinity school. And I listened well. It was speaking to me as an Episcopalian. He did. He was Southern Presbyterian. And we just practiced that in the Episcopal Church pretty well, it seems to me. We've got a lot of different kinds of folk and beautiful liturgy. We have an abundance. But all of us have got an abundance, especially here in Appalachia, of all places. I know that to be true now. I can't say I've always had that. So this is a testimony as well. Well, Tom and his wife Eva were on my porch. I had met them over at the university, and really fine people. He said, well, how did all this happen? I said, what, Tom? I thought I knew who he was talking about. Well, you got Latin over there in that little church, and you got gay people, and no doubt some trans folk, and I've met more trans folk here than I did in New York City, ever. Talk about a whole nother subject. And I said, it's just like the professor told me, it's an abundance of creation, but that question bothers me a little bit, Tom, that you're asking me, how could that happen here? And he said, in Carter County, yeah. I said, I don't take that question real well, but I appreciate it, nevertheless, because I'm going to educate you and tell you, I know you know the Bible. I know a little bit about it. And right there in Genesis, when my professor questioned me about down there in 95% Trump country, well, it was about 75, 85%. It was a lot. I said, that's right, Professor. And he offended me a little bit, small o. Told Tom, told him, are you saying that the abundance of creation just stops somewhere magically and it doesn't include Carter County, Tennessee? Professor was embarrassed. He said, I'm embarrassed. You're right, Father Tim. Well, Tom, being a music writer, went and wrote this song about it, that the abundance of creation don't stop at the county line. So we'll be singing that in just a moment. Let's go right on down. What's our time? We got 5 minutes, 10 minutes? 5. Look at the bottom of page 3. We're going to end with that song. Here's what we do. It's not real complicated, and people enjoy it if they're honest and smart. First Sunday, we have Appalachian traditional music and celebration. Nothing heavy, just something rather quite often out of the hymnal. But it might be something a little bit reaching out a little bit from another traditional hymnal, such as the Missionary Baptist. Advent and Summer Appalachian Evensongs, I mentioned. Christmas and Easter always have Appalachian traditional music. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. celebration. Well, that's African American, that's right. And there's a thing called Black Appalachia. And there's an organization that's moving strong called Black Appalachia. If you don't know it, look it up, because it's about being black and being from Appalachia. And that's a very distinguished group of people. I had no idea. And they use some other names from time to time. But Black Appalachia is started in the academy and in the association's academic, but has grown across society now. And their work is known well. We're very proud of Trey Wellington, the black banjo. The banjo is black, you know, on CNN the other night representing Black Appalachia from right here. He's over back home in North Carolina, got his master's with Lee over there state. St. Francis Blessing of the Animals, that is so wonderful. Outside, have a big yard party, and we got bluegrass going like you wouldn't believe. Sources and opportunities here, and I imagine in most of your homes, the community, schools, churches, music festivals, centers, partnerships, scholarships, old players assistant. We have some of these old players, they played guitar until they just about died. They had very little Social Security. They called up Father Tim, my wife, this was a primitive Baptist. My wife's in there and she's not I don't think she's going to live. She died. And I said, is there any way we could help out? He said he wasn't too proud to take a gift. But thanks to Tom and Tim, we were able to give for her burial and for him for a little bit better life up in Pogie, Carter County. Not many Episcopalians up there, $1,000 gift. These are the kinds of things we can do. We're not buying friends, we're being part of the community, and we're sincere about it. They love us, we love them. Why not Episcopalians? We know how to do that. So, got 2 minutes. Can we come back up for one more song? Could y'all introduce yourselves and just say a quick word, because You're so beautiful, every one of you. And you all are too, by the way. So let's stand up because you have that abundance at your home, and know that, and be mighty. The words are on page, anybody got the page number? Thank you. Page 5 or 4? 5? Well, I got the wrong one. Well, I still got the words. Thank you.
My name is Leslie Smith, and I have here on fiddle Lucy Smith and mandolin my son they're all three mine. My son Sawyer Smith and River Smith on banjo.
You all are so good. Thank you so much. Now this is a first, but we're going to try it out.
Some birds are born more colorful, but they're still made to fly. Guess the one could say the same for the likes of you and I. And as far as I can gather, for all that I can find, the abundance of creation don't stop on the county line. Did you have a choice at the moment of your birth? Or did you just come out that way for all that it was worth? It won't cost a penny for us all to change our minds. The abundance of creation don't stop on the county line. There's no talk of building fences in the book of old King James. Reaching out your hand won't make the world go down in flames. Driving down the road I never came upon a sign saying the abundance of creation don't stop on the county line. Can we forget our differences for just a little while? You don't have to love your neighbor, but the Savior said to try. By the way, it won't even cost you one thin dime. The abundance of creation don't stop on the county line. When we make our move up yonder, we'll all see the grand design. The abundance of creation don't stop on the county line. There's no talk of building fences in the book of old King James. Reaching out your hand won't make the world go down in flames. Driving down the road I never came upon a sign saying the abundance of creation stops here on the county line. Saying the abundance of creation stops here on the county line.
When we make our way up yonder and see the grand design, the abundance of creation, don't stop on the county line. Thank you all very much. Come back and see us and come get some material on the tables. Thank you all.